Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of A Grade in a Pearl Shell, where we go diving for those pearls of wisdom in the minds of students and parents who have been there, done it, and come out well. They've survived. So, without further ado, let me introduce this one with Artem. He was an ex-student of mine. He's currently studying finance at a Russel Group University in the UK, and I'm very proud of him, and especially his story because it might sound familiar to you. It begins with a pile of messy notes from all of his courses inside one giant folder. He doesn't know where to start. He's feeling overwhelmed in class and at school, and everything's a little bit confusing and all over the place. And of course, with this, his tests are suffering, but he manages to turn it around, and this is where it gets exciting and he turns it around in a very, very interesting way. And he talks to us in this podcast about how he developed a sense of discipline and organization that I think will be very valuable to all students and perhaps even parents listening. So with this, let's begin. Remember, you can get the summary and the key points on the website chatanbat.co.uk, where we write this up as a blog. And so, yes, exactly. With this, let's get right into it. Hi, Artem. It's really good to have you on this podcast. I can't wait to hear all of your stories since the last time that we had a lesson, and also to understand what your thoughts are about learning and education in general. So I think I will begin by introducing you from my perspective. I believe I started teaching you pre-GCSE. You were a student who was very, very good at piano, and as we know, pianists have also a mind for mathematics because there's a crossover in the way that those two subject areas work. And so I taught you maths, I taught you science, and now you're at university. So maybe you want to take it from there, introduce yourself, what you're doing at university, and yeah, excited.
Yeah. So I'm in uni now, as you said, and I'm gonna be studying finance and accounting as my degree. I chose this path because it is related to mathematics, and numbers were always in my background, and I always felt confident with numbers, and it's something I had passion for, and I know if I did it, I'll do it well. So yeah, and so when I did mathematics with you through GCSEs and A levels, it's something. First of all, when I did it at GCSE, I enjoyed it. It was all logical to me, and it's something that I loved. And I said, let me take this further because I want to know the subject, and I want to go more in depth with it. So I said, let me try it out. Let's see how it goes. Did it? It was all fine. And now it turns out that I'm taking it even more further, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna do it in uni.
That's really fantastic. That's really fantastic to hear. So, with that in mind, like I thought we'd begin by talking a little bit about, generally when you're at school, but maybe specifically with maths, what was the kind of things that you found like most troublesome that you found were like the biggest obstacles? And then we get into like how you overcame them.
Do you with
Yeah.
mathematics or in general?
Let's start with maths and then we'll go general because I'm sure, yeah, so there's a lot
Yeah,
to talk
because
about.
yeah. So for maths is there was lots of new information you had to learn. As a student, you come to it all just falls on your head. Yeah, and if you in the hands with a good person, he will break it down for you nice and slowly. But in my case, in Mill Hill School, which I went to, it all just went bam, and like I was like, okay, I need help. That's when I was like, Chiefan, you're coming along on this trip. And
It was a good
yeah,
trip.
uh, it was
Good
a good
journey.
trip. It was a good trip. Yeah, and first of all, it's a lot of information. You have to keep track of it. And what I came across, I panicked when I looked at it and I saw it all. And I was like, okay, and my brain just went lock. I don't want to understand anything. Like I'm helpless, and like that's it.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, and that's where I felt me and you just broke it down, and we just said, step by step by step. And that's when you do it, you take things slowly. You take things slowly, you understand it better. Yes, it takes longer time to process it all, but I mean, you're getting the material correctly, you're understanding, you know how to use it. And for exams, what's important, if you know how to use it, because the questions are not going to be straight from the textbook, right? They're going to be a bit twisted, or like they're going to hint to you that this is what you have to use, right? And if you understand it, you'll figure that out. You'll look at it and you see, okay, this is what I have to use. So that's, in my perspective, I say taking things slow is always an advantage. If you want to know that material and really know how to use it, that's what's most
Building it
important.
up
But
from the foundation.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. But speaking in general terms, my biggest struggle was understanding of material. I did business A level. I would read something and I would not understand it. And I was like, okay, this does not make sense. How I solved that problem, I kept rereading the same little extract 100 times. I reread it, didn't understand it. I was like, okay, let me break it down slowly. One part, second part, third part. You understand small parts, you add it all together, it makes sense.
Yeah, right. I think that's an incredibly important piece of advice to any any student listening, is that when you get stuck, I'm just following what you just said. When you get stuck, it's sometimes because the thing that you're trying to tackle as a block is too big, and so when you break it down into smaller pieces and understand those small pieces, you can then start to make sense of the bigger whole, and it's easier that way too. And as a tutor, I would say that this is really common, especially in the sciences where there's a lot of terminology, a lot of jargon. And oftentimes when you read a sentence, it feels like it makes sense, but you really don't understand it because the jargon itself, the specific words, they're unfamiliar. And so you have to make sure you get all your definitions really, really clear. And then the language of the subject starts to make sense. And for that, you need to take your approach. So that's really cool. That's really cool. Now, was there any kind of particular way that you discovered, because especially with business, there's a lot of, as you say, words, right? There's a lot of concepts written as words. Was there any approach that you found with note taking that was particularly useful with these kind of subjects?
Well, this was, I would say one phrase: practice makes it perfect. That's it, really. Taking notes is helpful. Being organized, that also helps. If you know what class, what theme, what section is where laid out in your folder. I used online version. I used OneNote. OneNote I recommend highly because it's very useful. It's organized and teachers have access to it as well, so they can see your work. They can upload. It's nice and simple. I used it and I was organized, so I know exactly what section was where, and it was easy if I was revising to go to that section because I know, okay, theme 4, I have a test on Friday on it. I go to it, I have all my notes there. If you take notes, number 1 rule, be organized. Know where your notes are because you're taking notes for revision. When it comes to revision time, you have to know where they are. In my GCSEs, I didn't know anything. I just took it, put it in a folder. My folder was this big, and in that folder, I had 13 different subjects,
Right. And you have no idea.
Exactly. You have no idea what's where, what you revise for. And when it comes to the test, you're like, oh, I didn't revise this. Nice, Not the greatest feeling.
I think I have a blog post somewhere where I basically had a line that said notes are not an archive of all the things that you think you might forget. Basically, they're not supposed to be like a room where you just dump everything. One day you'll come to it and find it. Because when it comes to it, it's all a big mess and you have no idea where any reference is. And I think very, very good to be organized. I'm going to ask you, how did you organize them? Because the reality is that, like you say, when you're at school, everything's just happening. You're writing things down, you're going home, you're doing something quickly, you got homeworks, you got this, you got that. How did you structure it so you knew that a certain note referenced a certain topic and a certain part of the textbook? How did you keep it organized?
Simply, I was that one kid in the class who would say at the beginning of every lesson, "What are we studying?" and like, "What is this related to?" And
Yeah.
my teacher would say, "This is theme 4.2, globalization, right? Anything."
Mm-hmm.
So I say, "Okay." So I create a new folder in my online book, right, online notebook, 4.2 globalization. Keep my notes there. Next
Okay.
lesson, I say, "Do we continue with globalization or is it a new thing?" They say, "We continue." So I continue. And instead of everything being one long page, because that's not useful, because every day you cover different things, I said, lesson one, I have my information. Lesson two, I have my notes there. Just know what you're doing, because sometimes you go there, you think you're going to continue with the same material, but you're studying something completely new. So just make sure you know what you're doing. Make sure you ask if you're unsure. Keep it all organized, divide it. Having more folders in a big pack, helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Don't
Okay.
have one big pack called business and all your notes there, because that's unhelpful. You don't
Yeah.
know what's AS level or what's A level, or just nothing.
It's the whole thing
So
gets jumbled.
yeah,
And
so
yeah.
having lots of folders in one folder is definitely a good idea to do.
Okay. Okay. And do you know what? I think part of that, and you kind of hinted on it, it really helps with the exam because if you have that organized in your mind, which topic, which facts fit which is with each topic, then in the exam, when they ask you a question, you know which facts to recall because you can recognize the topic that it comes from. It's not a big blur, and that really, really helps. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
and for sure, like with me, I go also somehow a photograph memory.
Okay.
So I would look at it, and
Yeah.
when I look at the question paper, I know exactly how it looks, what it has to do with, and what they want me and what they're asking me to do. So that helps as well.
That helps as well. Yeah, very good. And so I think this is a great way to extend it. Like, how was your approach towards exams then? Did you have a certain kind of routine or method when it came to revising for a test or an exam?
Well, for me, it was crazy times. Yeah, COVID hit, and exams were, and every day you don't know what was happening.
Okay.
But because one minute they say they are happening, the another thing they cancel it, and it's just like a whole mess. But it doesn't matter. Exams still happen,
Yep.
and in that revision period was I got with COVID, I got told what massive sections is going to be. Right? They said in this paper it's going to be theme one, theme two. That's it. No more in-depth knowledge. Yeah, no more information. That's it. I said, okay. So because I had all my folders organized, I looked, team one, look, I had all my notes there from Monday to Friday, every single
Yeah.
week. Yeah. And I just revised every single one of them. That's all. If you have organization, it's key to success, right?
Yeah.
So
True.
if it was normal circumstance like AS levels I had in my mock exams, they said, okay, you're gonna have uh, paper for business and it's going to include only theme pool. Okay, fine. Open up theme pool. All your notes are there. The same thing. For my other subject, music, the same thing. I did music, maths, and business. For maths, the same thing. They said it's going to be a non-calculator paper. Fine.
Yeah.
So you're going to know everything that you have section for non-calc, everything that you need to know for non-calculation. That would include, what do you think? That's not going to include you calculating radius or like using your calculator for pi. Yeah, if it says no calc, that means trigonometry, something
Yeah.
simple, something that uses words, something that you rules that you have to remember, and equations. That's what it
That's
means.
correct.
Okay, so you write it out. If it says this paper is going to have calculator, fine, that doesn't really help. But if it breaks it down a little further, saying it's going to have these themes and these themes, again, you go to your notes, you have all the themes organized, and you look at them.
Oh, okay. This is making me want to ask a couple of other questions. So one is like so when you're at GCSE, you said that you weren't this organized, but at A
Yeah, I
levels
wasn't.
you transitioned to becoming like this. What do you think motivated you to mark that transition, and how did you learn about like how did this idea come to you? You know?
Well, my
Yeah.
first week of A levels, I was like, oh my, I was like, what? I was like, what is this? And got for me, GCSEs and A levels was a hell of a gap. I was like,
For a lot of
wow,
people.
okay,
For a lot of
big
people.
boy. You have to become a big boy, yeah.
Yeah.
You can't be out there in the GCSE world. I was like, okay, everything got serious right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the first week I got so much work. I got this information. I didn't even know I'm gonna have like the structure of timetable is different. Yeah, you don't know where you go. Your first week you panic. You don't know where you're going. You have multiple teachers for the same subject. Normally, even GCSEs, you didn't really have that.
That's
Yeah,
true.
in
Yeah,
my
like two or
school,
three.
I only had one teacher, one subject. Here, I have three, four teachers, one subject. I was like, okay, organization, different teacher, different folder.
Okay.
And then I was like, okay, in my first week, I was doing business.
Yeah.
I did my business, I took my notes, and I was like, wait a minute, I'm having more than one teacher. That's that's I have four teachers. That's 4 points of information sources coming all at you for the same
Yeah.
subject.
Yeah.
You go, it's like if
Yeah.
one teacher asks you, you have to do this for homework. Okay, you can't put it in the same folder because you're gonna forget it or give it to a different teacher, or like it's gonna be a mess. You're gonna get in trouble. They're gonna get angry. It's
So,
nothing is fun. So
yeah, go on.
so every teacher, I was like, okay, because I realized A levels are hard. My
Yeah.
first week, I was like, wow, I have to get my pants on here.
Yeah.
It was difficult. It was hard. It was lots of information. You get
Yeah.
used to it. Yeah. I don't want to scare people because right now I'm going to go to university. I'm going to feel exactly the same way.
All over again. And then you're going to graduate
All over again.
university and then feel the same all over again.
Yeah.
Life just keeps on piling on the
It just
challenges,
keeps
but yeah.
on. Exactly.
But it's
So
good
yeah,
because it looks like
just
you're
be.
coming up with tools to to take on those challenges. Sorry, I just wanted to say that, but
No,
carry
no,
on,
no, no.
carry on,
Yeah.
carry on. Yeah,
But yeah, I would just say be organized. What made
yeah.
me become one is because I realized I have so much
Mhm.
information coming out from different sources, and I need to keep it all like to section to section to section. Cut it, divide it. That's why they sell folders and dividers, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
come on.
I don't know. So, like, what made you like when it comes to organization? You have many options, but you chose this very kind of like it sounds like um, kind of like main heading and then subsections and then subsection of subsections. That kind of an approach to organizing. Does that come from like maybe music and how music is often organized, or was that something that a family member showed you or taught you or a tutor?
Well, you definitely when me and you had lessons,
Okay.
we had our own folder and we used dividers as well. That was the first beginning to it.
Okay.
When COVID happened, me and you three went to online. We had our own different every day we had a different page for work. So I kept it all labeled. And because at one point on my desktop, my
Yeah.
whole desktop was covered with our work and I was like, okay, I need to organize this because I have
Okay.
no more space for us. So then I say, this is covered in one lesson, this is covered in another lesson. What did we cover? Trigonometry. Okay, that's
So
important
there
for
we
me.
go.
Yeah.
Very good, very good. That's good to know that how our lessons operated was something useful, and there's something that that maintained and then helped you in many other subjects throughout A level. And what kept you kind of so these kinds of note taking systems, they do take up that extra tiny bit of effort, that extra tiny bit of time that a lot of students I know would prefer to avoid. Like in the short term, create the mess, we'll deal with it later. So I think I already understand why you wanted to put in that time because you foresaw that this is going to be a mountain to climb, and if I don't start off on the right foot,
Yeah.
then this is gonna this is not gonna go my way. But still, like I suppose that throughout the whole journey, you might have had many points of thinking, no, this is too much effort. Let's just ignore the note taking thing. What kept you um, going with it, and how did you document it on OneNote? especially there's two questions. What kept you going, and what was your format on OneNote? Yeah.
It's quite simple, really, because
Okay.
once, yes, I gave up and I was like, okay, this is not, this is unnecessary. I said to myself,
Mhm.
put it all in one big chunk of folder. I was like, okay, fine. And then exam came across and I didn't know what to find. And I didn't do well in that exam. I completely failed it. And I was
Okay.
like, okay, that this shows, full stop. I didn't organize it. I didn't know what I had to revise for what. And you get a bad grade, full stop. And I was like, back to my organization. And I knew exactly what was in my sections for and what I
Mhm.
had to revise for my exams. I did well. It was simple as that. Bad grades
So,
motivated me to restart my little sequence again.
okay, very good, very good. I think that's a very understandable motivation. I think that's a
Yeah.
familiar one to many of us. And what was the kind of format on? Well, actually, by the way, just to say, there is an important thing here, which is that when the bad grade came, you didn't give up or think that you weren't able. You actually came back at it, but with a different approach, which
Oh
then
yeah.
worked, which is sign of competence,
I
which is very good.
I there was no test that when I got a bad grade I said okay. And I just walked off. Yeah. I
Mhm.
got a bad grade. I said to my teacher, I want to reset the same exam.
Yeah.
She said, why? I was like, I was honest. I was like, I just didn't revise for it because I'm a mess. Yeah. And then she was like, okay, fine. So I went back, I reorganized everything. Yes, it takes time. But I mean, if you want good grades, you have to put in some work. That it's as simple as that. If students are gonna be a little bit lazy here and there and it's all gonna be fine, believe me, it's gonna bite you back. Because that happened to me and I'm speaking from experience. You can't put, and the best thing, my favorite,
Yeah.
when you are too lazy to copy from the board and you take a picture on your phone,
Mhm.
yeah, you might as well just delete it at the same second because you're never gonna look at it again, never. I
Yeah.
got a whole camera roll of those photos from the board, and I was like, oh wow, oh yeah, but it's like
I remember taking those.
yeah, it's a burial. Like just don't. Take your time, take your notes, be organized. You'll be fine. You have nothing to worry about.
Yeah, I think what I've learned, what that moment is, and it exists throughout life, is this moment where you have to engage with the material, and that takes effort and stress. And then, as a human being, you'd always want to avoid that moment. So by taking the photo, you think you've kind of you're leaving it till later. That moment of
Yeah,
engaging with the material. I've got it. I feel safe, but I'm leaving it till later. But the issue with that is that time doesn't care about like
yeah.
your sequence of events unless you actually engage with the material. It will always be something that will just pile up that you will have to engage with later anyway. So yeah, yeah, much
And
better.
believe me, the further you go into your subject, and let's say into A levels,
Yeah,
you don't have time. Every second counts. Believe me, the last half year of your education, that's when every second counts. You take, I would say this straight away. If you be organized and all fine, you have nothing to worry about. Well, I wasn't. That's why I had to introduce the system to myself and say, this is how I'm gonna do it. Because I had to come into Saturdays. I had to do extra catch-up cleanings, and those little sessions that help you out because I simply couldn't find the notes. Maybe I knew the material, but I didn't know what I was revising for, what we covered, and you end up actually wasting more time at the end. If you
yeah.
keep it up nice and tidy from the start, you'll be fine, and believe me, you'll find it easy.
Be funny. I think when you are organizing your material, your notes, you are showing that to yourself that you're paying attention. You know what this stuff is because you've engaged with it, and then you're placing in the correct places. It's a small amount of effort, I think, for a huge result at the end. Um,
Exactly.
yeah, and I think sometimes maybe all of us need to experience that like bad grade first to realize, oh no, it's definitely worth it. And
Uh, You have,
yeah,
the only way to succeed is to learn from your mistakes. It's as simple as that. You have to make those mistakes, and if you get a mistake, don't panic. Yeah,
yeah.
I got U's and F's, okay, and I was
Mhm.
like, okay, well, clearly I know why because I didn't revise for it. Yeah, and I basically paid half attention in lessons, but but multiple times I had to ask my friends, can I copy a note? Can I do this? Can I do that? Because I wouldn't be in the lesson or I wouldn't pay attention in the lesson. And saying this now, don't do it. Just go to them because you waste more time and effort at the end trying to catch up and making sure you know the material.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes an hour to study one subject in your lesson. Yeah. In some schools,
Mhm.
it's 40 minutes or I don't know. I, d- I miss lessons, yeah. I would walk off and stuff like that. And then for me to catch up that material takes me hours, not 1 hour,
Okay.
copying and understanding because the test was coming up on it at the end.
Yeah, so you're not
So
going
you
to
have
escape.
to, yeah, it doesn't matter where you are, you're still sitting the test.
Yeah.
So just just don't do it. Full stop.
And the test will probe you for all of your understanding. So if it's not there, it's going to come through. That's very good. So don't give up on yourself. Try again. Organization is a great way to try again. They say that it's not just about effort; it's about strategy and effort. And it seems like you um, developed that understanding throughout your level, which I think is really, really cool. So speaking of strategy, and let's get to OneNote now. How did you organize your notes in OneNote? Was there a particular way that you did it, or was it very, very like simple, straightforward, which is oftentimes really
How did
good
I
to
organize what?
your notes in OneNote.
Uh,
Yeah,
how did I organize it? Bunch of folders.
yeah, and
It's as
subfolders.
simple as that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I have one folder called business. You click on it, and then it says theme one, theme two, theme three, theme four. You click on theme one, you'll go 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and so on. You click on 1.1, it'll say lesson one, lesson two, lesson three, lesson four. A full, it's like it's literally a Russian bowl. You open
Yeah.
smaller one,
So
smaller
that's
one.
fine.
Yeah.
Was it like bullet points, or did you have diagrams in there?
I I would recommend using if you have the opportunity because I got an iPad and I used OneNote and I could draw diagrams as well. I have a little keyboard, so I took notes, I took equations, I took bullet points. If there was a diagram, I'll copy it and draw it in. Because for me, as I prefer more diagrams than text, because text can be overwhelming and it doesn't really get you the point. But diagram, you can look at it, memorize it. When a question comes, you remember that diagram
Yeah.
and it all makes sense and it's easier.
Hmm. No, I agree with that. And I think if you are a more verbally kind of oriented person, like you prefer words, having fewer words on the page rather than text can behave a little bit like a diagram in that you can recognize those few words very, very quickly and you can understand what they mean and how they connect very, very quickly, which is kind of the principle behind a diagram.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also, as I'm from Russia, if anyone's curious, and
Yeah.
is not my first language. And when I was studying it, I still maybe some international students would relate. You struggle with text, you struggle with understanding. Some people, I used to translate it to my language and then try
Mhm.
to make sense of it. It takes time and then it just doesn't work. Diagrams is it's in every language, Every
Yeah.
diagram is it's a one language. We all speak it. So making a diagram, it's easier to understand. You'll remember it longer, and even if you show it to someone or someone shows it to you, you understand it quicker too.
That's true. That's true. It's easier to explain it through, and that's really interesting. So, would there be a particular way you draw these diagrams, or would it just be more or less you decide when you come across
Uh,
it?
for, it, Diagrams I would draw if it would be, let's say, probability. I would draw a pie chart. Simple as that. If it
Yeah.
was a something to do in business with supply and demand, let's say, I would draw a quick X Y axis, draw a line
Mhm.
showing, indicating, and making it, understandable. If it's a small change, you make it a small change, but such a small change that it looks a bit extreme. So that's why it's just easier to memorize it. If you make
Ah,
everything look similar to one another, it's hard to remember. You know, it's like saying
very good.
this will change a little bit, but in your diagram, you make a massive change because
Right.
it's easier to understand. If you make everything a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, all
Or
your diagrams
blurs.
become, it all becomes muddled up and it's harder to remember it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually an extremely good point. That's extremely valuable, I think. Yeah, when you, with anything you wish to memorize, it needs to stand out in some way. It needs to be different in some way. And if it's different enough, your mind wants to remember it, right? If it's the
Exactly.
same, there's no motivation. It's like, oh, it's just one and the other
Yeah.
is all this. So even if it's a small change, to kind of exaggerate it, make it a bit absurd or a bit
Yeah.
obvious, really helps. I think that's a very cool piece of advice. And so how did that? And so with all that, with all your OneNote or everything broken down,
Hmm.
when it came to a test or an exam, how did you go about learning the material and go about ensuring a good grade for your exam? What was the connection between your notes and the exam basically? How did you?
I'll be honest, when you come, or I hope people are in the same position as I was, when you come to your exams, you should know your material, full stop. You should not need to go back at your revision notes to figure out what the hell you spend all this time learning and
Yeah.
what you've been looking for and trying to relearn it or re-understand that material. That shouldn't be your position, full stop.
Mhm.
When it comes to exam, you should know it. If you don't know it, be organized. You can find it easily. It takes time. Because I already knew it, I didn't have to waste my time on that. When it comes to exams, practice. I took past papers. I did past papers. I did essay questions for business, and for music, I did listening practice.
Okay.
It's as simple as that. Because when I was sitting here in the same chair in the same room,
Yeah.
and my exams were in 2 weeks,
Yeah.
yeah. If you're relearning stuff, that's when you really should panic. Okay,
You
simple as
feel
that.
the pressure in that
Oh yeah,
position.
and pressure never helps. If you can't, if you walk into your exam room with pressure on you, good luck. You know.
that's a heavy feeling. Yeah, you should enter an exam feeling prepared and
Prepared and always accept challenges. If
mm,
in every exam which I did, there was one little bit, one little question, that little sneaky question that you just didn't know it. Yeah, you didn't
yeah.
know it. You over panicked. You got too stressed. And sometimes in my situation, when I walk in the exam room, my mind went blank. It was like gone, you know. And I was
Oh
like,
wow.
okay, yeah. And I was like, too late to back down now, you know.
Okay.
So I open it and just be ready for a challenge. Accept challenge. Challenges are good.
Okay.
They are there to improve you and to make you grow as a character and a person. Full stop.
Good.
If you're ready for those challenges, you will attempt them. Attempting them, yes, it doesn't mean you'll get 100% right, but you'll get some method marks. You'll get some marks for it if we're speaking in terms of exam technique, right? I attempt every question. You don't know it, draw something random, any equation. You might get it right. In my actual A levels, I made my work for the question I didn't know messy. Yeah, I
Okay.
included 5 different equations. I wouldn't recommend this. Yeah, I would recommend you know your material. But
Yeah.
in those cases, I put 5 different equations for 5 different complete topics for the one question. You know, and I said, I mean, if he sees it, he has to mark it.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. So I was going to say, like, if you're hitting a question that you don't know exactly what to say or how to answer it, I would say go back, try and pick up a word in the question that makes you think of a topic that you know, and then to recall it. For that, you need to be organized in the first place because you need to know the topics and the way all the facts sit. But the other way around, and you still need to know the topics, is to put like 4 or 5 different answers to the same question. But you have to still know the topics, otherwise you don't know what to write at all. Um, you know.
Or I mean, if you don't know your topics, it shouldn't be an exam. Full stop. I mean, why are you walking into exam not knowing your topics? And like, I don't know. I don't know. Every person has different ambition. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I've got big ambition. So
Okay.
my motivation was I have to know every topic to get a good grade, because a good grade will result in a better uni, and better
Yeah.
uni will result in a better job. Simple as that. You
Okay.
have to start thinking now
Yeah.
for a long game, long term. It all starts here. As there's a saying, you plant a seed now or wait for the tree to grow. Yeah.
Yeah, well, like I saw the seed when you were about 15, and it has grown. This is
I don't know. That wasn't
really.
a seed. That was something else. Yeah.
No, but it's really, really nice to hear your thoughts, Artem, and I think it's very, very valuable to many people. And so, yeah, I think the message here is that everything begins with the beginning of the year, the beginning of your course. Don't delay it. Don't accumulate the pressure, and especially get organized from the beginning. It's worth it. Hi everyone, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, you'll really enjoy the next one, where Artem talks about mind blank, which affects a lot of people, and how he framed his university decision, something very, very hard to do. And so I hope you found this one useful. I reckon you'll find the next one useful, and we'll see you there. But just before we go, if you liked it, drop us a like, because it helps others discover this video too. If you found it useful, they would too. So we're just helping each other help each other. And if you don't want to miss the next one, please drop us a subscribe. Thank you so much, and see you in the next one.